Every 2 years, football comes home to Africa. This year's Afcom, hosted by Cameroon, and sure, there's plenty of fodder for critics, blown calls by the ref, dodgy COVID protocol decisions, and that deadly stampede that left 8 dead in the capital. And yet, football fans the world over are riveted. Why? Every day's brought tales of suspense and surprise. Fans have seen stars who normally in winter would be practicing their trade in major European leagues. Minnows have upset powerhouses. And there's all to play for in the build-up to this weekend's quarterfinals. In a world where sports is often polished, dare we ask if it's precisely because of the Africa Cup of Nations always has that potential to go off script that we love it so. Is it better than, say, the prospect of a World Cup in the artificial surroundings of Qatar next November? If you're talking sports, politics is never far behind. If no one believes that footballing glory can make mismanagement, endemic corruption, and a separatist rebellion go away in Cameroon, no doubt that 88-year-old strongman Paul Biya won't say no to the indomitable Lions lifting a bit of silverware when it's all over. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Africa's moment here. And with us from Yaoundé, France 24's sports editor, Simon Harding. How are you doing, Simon?
Hi, François. Pleasure to be with you.
Also in the Cameroonian capital, France 24 correspondent Claudia Insono. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
From Douala, sportscaster Juliette Baoua, head of sports at Media General Ghana. Should I get the condolences out of the way about the Black Stars?
Well, I think I've moved on from that.
All right, you've moved on. That's good. Veteran coach Gernot Rohr managed the Super Eagles of Nigeria until last month. It's a pleasure to welcome you back to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody.
And Eurosport's Ruben Slachter is with us as well. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
The France 24 debate where you can join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Yeah, 2 rest days before the weekend where if it goes to plan, and it often has not since the start of this tournament, the hosts would be through to face Senegal, while Egypt would set up a semi-final clash with Morocco. There you see the brackets of matches, the fixtures coming up this weekend. Simon Harding, it's been so hard to predict.
Yes, it's been a very strange Africa Cup of Nations where it seems that the powerhouses on the continent have struggled. Many of them already out of the competition, including the defending champions Algeria. That was a massive shock and the most unexpected of them all. But also Nigeria, Gernot's old team, of course, who were faultless during the group stages and yet who really struggled against Tunisia, losing that one out. It's been, in fact, an Africa Cup of Nations where whoever the team has played most consistently and to their full ability, whether they be a giant or a minnow, has performed the best and the most admirably. And the one that comes most to mind is possibly the Gambia, who have got a really tough game against Cameroon coming up. But who knows? Cameroon haven't performed that well, and the Gambia might keep marching on.
Let's try to digest what we've just been through the last few days. The summit clash of the round of 16 went to penalty kicks. We're talking about Mo Salah's Egypt outlasting Nicolas Pepe's Ivory Coast. The Pharaohs, who had a slow start to the tournament and felt the pressure from fans back home.
They deserve to be in the next round. They deserve a little bit of more kindness, more tolerance, more respect, special from our local commentators and media, that they've been slashing the team and the players.
Gernot Rohr, as a fellow manager, your reaction to what you heard there from Carlos Queiroz?
Yes, I know that the difference is sometimes very big between European football, between the journalists, between South American football and Africa. But myself, I'm used to it now since 12 years. And I think we have to adapt. The coaches have to adapt and not to complain about the comments, about the criticism of some journalists it's a part of the game, and we should concentrate on what is happening on the pitch, what is happening with our players, what is the tactics, and we have enough work to do and not to go too much to the discussions with the journalists or with the comments in generally.
For some, it's a strategy, right, to make out that the whole world's against their team.
Yeah, the strategy is very important for us, the coaches, but not the strategy with the journalists. You know, we have the opponents already to analyze, and then we have to give the strategy to our own team. So me personally, of course, I followed the Nigerian team, and I saw that they started very well in this tournament. And then when the decisive matches are coming, then unfortunately they lost this important game against Tunisia. There are also some players who are not here. Like, you know, we missed the players like Osimhen, who could not come, and others, Balogun in defense, who were injured, who could not come. And so it was not easy. But generally, in the beginning, the tournament, we didn't see so many goals. They start all the time with a lot of precaution, slowly, a lot of goalless draws in the first round, and then it's coming. The matches are becoming better and better, and I think now we should see
when you see a team,
an interesting tournament.
When you see a team like Egypt, which even in that clash against Ivory Coast, although they had their chances, were never firmly in command. The fact that they're building steam, does that make them a favor? Because after all, it is a tournament, Gernot Rohr.
Yeah, now you speak about Egypt. We know that Egypt is a very solid team, and they are playing like a block, very strong defensive block with good goalkeepers all the time. And they have one star, which is Salah, so they play on him a lot. And it's easy for the opponents to control one player. You know, I think they are missing a little bit of collective offensive forces. So they play too much with one star, that is Salah, offensively, and they have the defensive block. It is well known, but they are qualified, you know. We saw the Ivory Coast playing so well in the former game, in the group, but then in this game they could not score. So in these decisive games, you have to be very strong defensively and score one goal more than the opponent, or win on the penalties. That's what's happened for Egypt.
Juliette Baoua, who's caught your eye so far?
Well, like listening to what everyone is saying, and it definitely has been a good tournament so far, beyond the unfortunate stampede that's stained the beauty we have seen so far. It has been an amazing ride so far with so many interesting things to note. Yes, indeed, it was a smart thing for me, if you ask me, to go that 24 teams, as it allowed some more teams to join the fray and also offer the kind of competition that we have witnessed so far. Having an expanded Africa Cup of Nations was also going to be a good idea, as it also opened the competition up to all this brilliant football that we have seen, especially from the team that people never thought could offer the kind of stiffer opposition they have exhibited so far. So for me, so many teams, the teams clearly, they have impressed me. One might say minnows. No, there are no minnows these days in African football, and there are numerous feats to back up this. You can talk about the likes of Cape Verde, Comoros, Equatorial Guinea, hitherto wouldn't have a seat at the table of African football, let alone AFCON. So which stocks only the best. That is the best Africa's top nations when it comes to the Nations Cup. But through consistent and also an intentional homegrown development when it comes to the plan with regards to football in Africa, all these nations have now come up strongly, building solid teams that now rub shoulders with some of the very best. Take Gambia, for instance, never qualified for the Africa Cup of Nations. And in this year, they are making their debut and they go straight to the quarterfinals, they have a chance to go to the semis, although it's going to be very difficult, but they are going to give it a shot. That's a fairy tale that you can only get in the Africa Cup of Nations. There are other interesting tales and also storylines about the likes of Sierra Leone.
Yeah, let's first talk about Gambia, the lowest ranked team in the tournament. It can be proud of upsetting Guinea in the knockout phase. And yeah, as you're saying, Juliette, they face an even taller order when they take on the hosts. Just to remind our viewers who aren't in Africa, we're talking about a former British colony that surrounds the Gambia River, and it's surrounded by Senegal on three sides. And it is a wonder that they managed to qualify for the quarterfinals. What's been the secret of their success, Juliette, and can they upset the hosts in the quarters?
Yesterday, I spoke to the coach of the side, that is Tom Sinfet, and he was clear about what he wants to do with this team. He said, you don't have to have players. You have to have a team, and that is what he is building. I sought to understand exactly what has been going on, that his team is doing so well. And when you look at the squad that they brought to the Africa Cup of Nations, over 7 players in there are playing in the lower tier clubs outside. And that should tell you that big names doesn't really always play football. He has worked on the mentality of the players. He has told them that you're going to meet bigger teams, but you also have to believe in your craft. You're going to get the result if you work hard. You're going to get that result. So you don't have to be scared in playing the likes of maybe Algeria, Cameroon, Ivory Coast. You have to put in your best shot. And that is what is ringing in the minds of these players. He's giving them so much confidence. He's giving them room to operate. And steadily, they are building a very formidable team. That is what he wanted to do. The plan was to get them to the Africa Cup of Nations. Now they are here. The plan is to take it game after game. And they did that. And he insisted that his toughest game that he played in the Africa Cup of Nations was against Mali. And Mali is nowhere in the Nations Cup now. But Gambia is here. They have a very good opportunity to go again. I remember one thing I asked him last night, if maybe it's a bit ambitious, but if they are going to, or if they can upset the host nation and even go ahead to win the Nations Cup, he said something funny that this can only happen in PlayStation, but you never know. He's keeping to himself, and he's making sure to psych up the team. And the captain of the side, who plays in lower tier club in Switzerland, but nothing shows. You've seen his dedication, you've seen his deal, and that is the kind of mentality, that is the kind of dedication when it comes to the Africa Cup of Nations. You've seen how people are going crazy in Banjul. That is what the Nations Cup is about. This is what it brings joy to the people, it brings joy to the players and joy to the country as well. And it also improves the revenue and everything when it comes to the organization. So for me, I'm really eager to see how that is Gambia are going to play
against the host Cameroon. Yeah, and speaking of unsung heroes, hero of the tournament so far has got to be Chaker Aladour. By day, he's the substitute left back for Ajaccio. That's a club in France that plays in second division. He's only played one match since a free transfer this season. At the Africa Cup of Nations, he's been thrust into the limelight when the Comoros found itself with one keeper injured, the other two barred by COVID protocols. Aladour made a couple of spectacular stops against the hosts as the visitors gave a scare to Cameroon.
No, really. I did what I could, that's it. It was unprecedented. I don't even know if we've ever seen that in football, a round of 16 without a goalkeeper. But we were prepared. I tried to prepare myself. It was really at the last second when I got on the pitch, I put on the goalkeeper's jersey. That's when I said to myself, oh yeah, this is real, I'm going to play goalkeeper. After that, it came naturally, and if I was able to help the team, my teammates also helped me a lot. It's thanks to them too, they stopped a lot of the opponent's shots. So it's a team effort that we did tonight. We can be proud.
They can be proud, Ruben Slaughter.
Yeah, they can. I mean, it's sad that they couldn't line up their best team for this match because even with 10 players and with no goalkeeper in goal, they were having a great match against Cameroon. They had probably even the best opportunities during that game. So it's a great story. It's a little bit sad as well because you want to see the best teams playing against the best, or at least the best 11 in the squad. But it's also something of the craziness and the charm of this tournament. That's for sure.
All right, and during the match, of course, most fans didn't know there'd been a stampede that's now left 8 dead. That's prompted an investigation and some finger pointing.
If that gate was open as it was supposed to, we wouldn't have had this problem we have now, this loss of life. Who closed that gate? Who's responsible for that gate?
So, Claudio Nsono, a couple of questions. First one, are we going to get an answer to that question? Claudio Nsono? All right, we seem to have lost the audio there with Yaoundé. Let's ask Simon Harding. Simon, are we going to get an answer to that question regarding the stampede?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's the wrong question to ask, Francois, because there was one very important issue that wasn't touched upon by the CAF president, and that was why were there so many people there? President Patrice Motsepe said the processes were in place to allow people to enter the ground properly. And it's important to remind our viewers at this time that anything that happens inside the ground is the jurisdiction of CAF, and everything that happens outside of the ground is the jurisdiction of the Cameroonian authorities. Now, Motsepe was very quick to point out that both parties were partners, that he didn't want to point the finger at anyone, and that it was very important that such an event never, ever happened again. However, Cameroonian authorities have, after the first round where there were few people in stadiums, have been giving out free tickets to spectators, particularly to watch the Indomitable Lions play, which has led to mass amount of people going to the gates. The Olembe Stadium isn't designed very well. There's two main causeways to access the stadium, the North Stand and the South Stand. And at the South Stand on Monday night, we were there, hundreds and hundreds of people. We're hoping to be early enough to access the stadium without a ticket. There were people pouring into the top seater levels inside the Olembe ground 15 minutes after kickoff, Francois, to give you an idea of the magnitude of people coming in. And that question wasn't touched upon. And there seems to be a very big amount of precaution taken between the Cameroonian authorities. Samuel Eto'o spoke about it as well, saying, that the processes had to be looked at. The investigation is ongoing. The CAF and Afcon executive committee met, and a verdict is due to be released tomorrow, Friday, to release those findings. So in regards to the question, I think it would be simplistic to just throw a stone to the security guard who opened the gate. The real problem was, why were so many people there? Was it wise to give out free tickets knowing that thousands upon thousands of people would try and get into the stadium? And if that is the case, then who is to blame?
All right, before we cross to our correspondent, Claudio Nsono, I know that you have to leave us, Gernot Rohr, so I do want to throw one last question to you about all of this. And just more broadly, when you go to an Africa Cup of Nations, you expect that not everything will go to script. What's your assessment of how this tournament has gone?
Yes, normally when you do the African Cup of Nations, you celebrate football, and this is difficult this year. It's difficult because of all this special situation. It's difficult because there are these restrictions. It's difficult because we had this sad event now, some people died. And it's difficult because the organization is not easy. So a celebration of football will be very difficult at this time. But what you see on the pitch is refreshing. You have these small teams who are doing well. You have these big surprises. Equatorial Guinea yesterday, also Comoros made a fantastic match. Also Gambia is still here. And Cape Verde played well. So this is very refreshing for African football. And you see things in Afcon which you cannot see otherwhere in Europe or somewhere. I never saw a game when a player who is even not a starting player in the goal had to play in the goal and to replace two goalkeepers who were positive in COVID test. So it is refreshing to see these things, to see these surprises, but it's very sad to see also the bad side of this tournament.
Thank you so much for joining us here in the France 24 debate, Gernot Rohr, for taking the time. Let's turn to Claudia Unsono, our correspondent. Claudia, there is the pall, of course, of the stampede that took place during that round of 16 match against the Comoros. For the Indomitable Lions, is there a feeling of uneasiness now, just on the pitch itself, over the fact that it's been such an easy run, and no disrespect to the Gambia? We heard Juliet sing their praises earlier, but again, they're meeting these minnows that back when the tournament wasn't 24 teams but 16, they probably wouldn't have had to meet. Their toughest encounter looks set to be the semifinal.
Well, I think that Cameroon actually would have to put up a very great performance, just because, as we've seen throughout the tournament, there isn't a small team. Even the first-timers have shocked the entire world of football, like Comoros did with Ghana, sent back home 4-time winners Ghana. Nobody saw that coming. So I think that Cameroon would have to practice as much as possible and to prepare for their game against the Gambia, and they should be as prepared as they would have been if they were playing against a team like Egypt, like Algeria, which of course was unprecedentedly ousted prematurely from the tournament. I understand that with the unfortunate tragedy that happens at the Olembe Stadium earlier this week, there has been a lot of sadness. People are really heartbroken, because nobody saw this. Nobody thought that someone would want to go and watch a football game and then die at that game, you know. So I think that this has touched not just the Lions, you know, Cameroonians as a whole. They've been throwing sympathies to families of the victims on social media. We've had several Cameroonians revisit the site of the tragedy to pay their tributes to the victims. And all of this, we cannot deny that all of this is in one way or the other going to affect the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon. But what their fans are hoping is that they would beat Ghana and that they would continue to the semis and, of course, the finals, and hopefully get an opportunity to clinch the trophy for the 6th time.
Ruben Slachter?
Yeah, well, just to come back to the 24 teams, it's a major advantage, because, I mean, we heard...
Really, because with the Euros, we kind of think it's a little too many.
Yeah, well, I think that in the Africa Cup of Nations, it's maybe not enough, to be honest. It's maybe a strange opinion, but I think that in Africa, you could easily even have 32 teams.
There's 54 nations in Africa.
Yeah, but we're already missing South Africa. We're missing both of the Congos, for example.
They didn't qualify.
They didn't qualify, but okay. If you now see that teams like Gambia, for them, it's a unique opportunity, and we say that they're taking this opportunity. But the main issue for me with 24 teams is that with 3 teams qualifying, we heard it Gernot Rohr saying as well, with 16 teams out of 24 qualifying, already the first round of matches, it's only tactics. It's waiting, it's getting your points. There is no entertainment, or there was not a lot of entertainment in those games. And we have to say, we have seen it also with, for example, the Euro 2016, where France was hosting and also in the same spot as Cameroon. The hosting teams in general get some kind of advantages with this whole setup, for me. I mean, for the Euros, for me, it would be way better to go back to 16. That's for sure, because the difference between the best European teams and the new European teams, is still too much. It's too big. But if you go to in Africa, I think that the difference is not there. That's what we're seeing. There's so many upsets, and if you want to win the Africa Cup of Nations now, you have to win 7 games. That's the same thing as when you are having 32 teams. I know that from an organizing point of view, it won't be easier because more stadiums, and it's not that easy to do it like this. But I think that with 24 teams, at least for the entertainment, it's not a good thing, because in the group stages you get way too many matches which are only about getting through and without playing proper football, I'm sorry to say.
So, Juliette Bawa, do you agree that maybe here in Europe, when we do the Euros, we'd be better going back to 16, But over in Africa, it would be even better if you went up to 32 teams.
No, I think for the 24, I always thought that 16 was too small. It's for a selected few. But when you open it up, like you're saying, the Nations Cup is not just about football. It's a party for the countries as well. So like we've seen, the AFCON continues to be that gift that keeps giving. It has given everything from players who were unknown, and now everybody on everybody's lips, to names that have become or have gone on to become stars in their own right. So the value of the Africa Cup of Nations has steadily grown, and for good reason. So for me, if it's taken to 24 teams, why not? I've covered so many Nations Cup, and you will know that the interest has always been there from organization who see it as an essential part of the football calendar. It is that singular tournament, if I should put it, that everything and comes to a complete package, or it gives you like a complete package, from the people to the culture to the tradition to the rich display of football, especially brewed, if I should put it that way, from that rich African football fountain. So for most African countries that you've seen here in Cameroon, this is also an opportunity for them to be part of that big celebration of African beauty and also ingenuity.
And it happens, Simon Harding, in the month of January. And this also is something, it's an old chestnut. The European clubs say, well, why don't you have your tournament in the summer at the end of our season? Of course, the weather is different in sub-Saharan Africa in the summer. It's often too hot in places. And the Africans and the world seems to like the way that it is in the calendar when it's cold here in Europe.
Well, I think there's no choice, really. You touched upon it. The climate is too demanding in the summer for most African nations. For example, here in Cameroon, if you were to have the competition in June, July, you'd be right smack in the middle of the rain seasons, which would make it, very difficult logistically to travel to games, maybe even to perform with the pitches and things like that. And that's an issue that we're going to see in the next Africa Cup of Nations in the Ivory Coast, because that one is going to be in the summer. And I can confirm, having been to the last Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt in summer, in June and July, it was impossible to breathe for kickoffs at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The teams could only put really their true performances in when they had the evening kickoff. So it is part of the charm that you have these competitions in the winter. European clubs, with the way football is going, with the money and the business behind it, are less and less happy to release players. We saw it during this edition. Gernot Rohr touched upon it. Victor Osimhen, for example, Nigeria's star striker, plays for Napoli in the Serie A, was denied the possibility to come to play because he supposedly had COVID and was recovering from a fractured face. But 2 weeks ago, he started playing again for Napoli, which created quite a bit of a scandal, and rightly so, because why should players be barred from playing for their national country? If you were to do that to a European team, then there would be an uproar, particularly if it's one of your best players. Having said that, the Africa Cup of Nations is a difficult one to plan, because once again, the next Africa Cup of Nations is going to be in summer. The previous one was in summer. There seems to be a lack of consistency at the moment, which is making it very difficult for nations to plan. And part of that is also this increase to 24 teams. Cameroon was heavily criticised for not being ready to host the Africa Cup of Nations 2 years ago, and even this year. But unfortunately, when Cameroon were given the Africa Cup of Nations, they were given it on the premise that it would be for only 16 teams, not 24. So that also meant that the infrastructures weren't there. So I think in terms of CAF organisation, things need to improve to have a clear image and idea of things going forwards, to bring the tournament more stability overall.
All right, the Africa Cup of Nations every 2 years. And hey, FIFA wants to do the same. For humanitarian reasons, they claim. The world body's president sparking outrage with these comments on Wednesday at the Council of Europe in Strasbourg.
We cannot say to the rest of the world, give us your money. If you have or happen to have a good player by coincidence, give us the player as well, but watch us on TV. We need to include them. We need to find ways to include the entire world, to give hope to Africans so that they don't need to cross the Mediterranean in order to find maybe a better life, but more probably death in the sea. We need to give opportunities and we need to give dignity, not by giving charity, but by allowing the rest of the world as well to participate.
Juliet Bawa, what have been the reactions to those remarks?
I think here in Douala yesterday at the stadium, you could clearly see that so many of the journalists, everybody was talking about it. Even in WhatsApp groups, everybody didn't understand the correlation between Africans traveling on the sea and also how it is going to help with a biennial World Cup, which it was quite confusing. But we also have to note that earlier, after that was said, about 3 hours or so, FIFA media released a statement from the president, and I quote, he says that he was taken out of context, or his speech was taken out of context. And he's saying that I wish to clarify that in my speech, my more general message was that everyone in a decision-making position has a responsibility to help improve situation of people around the world. I think it's a conversation that has been going on for a 2-year World Cup and everything. And it comes down to money and everything that has to do with the World Cup. You know, it's a big business, and it's also big for political business as well. But to link it to just Africans who are going on the Mediterranean and everything, I think it was a bit too much for that conversation. I'm sure it's not going to end today, it's not going to end tomorrow, and it looks like it's something deeper than we all are looking for. But
Right.
With a World Cup and 2-year World Cup, with Nations Cup being played in that is June, July, and also January, February, those are conversations that will be going on for a long time.
For a long time. By the way, we don't usually play clips that are 42 seconds long. That was a long clip. I'm not sure. It didn't sound like it was taken out of context to me. Did it to you, Ruben Slachter?
No, it wasn't. Because, okay, he is there in Strasbourg to talk with the Europeans and also with issues people are having in Europe with people coming from Africa. It's such a shame.
And Juliet hit the nail on the head. It's ultimately about making money.
It's only about making money. That's what football is about. Sorry, maybe Juliet wants to step in.
Juliet?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in because everyone heard what the president said, and I think it's just like you mentioned, it's about the backlash that came with that particular statement, because the correlation is not there. It doesn't really link up for me. So it's just let's make a business case for the World Cup hosting every 2 years, and then we can have a proper conversation around that, but not linking it to Africa and how you can use that to help people crossing the sea. What Africa needs now is for the teams that will be going to the World Cup to perform amazing, and that slot should be improved from that 5 that Africa has now to more slots, not talking about these other issues.
Ruben Slachter.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But we also have to be honest that the last World Cup, all Africa's teams crashed out in the first round. And for me, it wasn't a real surprise. Also, if you're looking at the performances right now, we're talking about all those fantastic stories, and there are lots in this Africa Cup of Nations. But we also have to be honest that the big teams are not showing up yet. We're really looking forward. When I think about those fantastic African performances in the World Cup, it's Senegal in 2002, but also that fantastic Nigerian team in the Olympics in 96, or Ghana in 2010.
Not to mention Cameroon in 1990.
1990, of course. But with this generation, I often have the idea, and we also heard about the more tactical play we are seeing. It's more defensive. I don't know if that's the strength of the African team.
But this tournament, and we've been talking about all the twists and turns we've seen, when you compare that to the artificial confines of Qatar next November when the World Cup takes place there, I mean, Qatar seems a little underwhelming at this point.
Yeah, well, at least Qatar, there's all the smell of money around it. So, this is way more about football, that's for sure. If you're asking me if these African teams, well, there will be 5 qualifying for the World Cup in Qatar, will they perform over there? I'm having my doubts, to be honest. Not because of there's no potential in the teams, but just the way they are playing right now. That's the difference for me.
Claudia Nsono, the Africa Cup of Nations with all of the challenges that were faced, described by Simon there, particularly having to organize for 24 instead of 16 teams. Nonetheless, the tournament is here, and again, it's always before a tournament. We scrutinized the hosts. We wondered if there would be lots of separatist attacks during the tournament from the rest of Anglophone areas of the country. Now it's all about the football for now. How is this going to help, hurt, or not the longtime president, Paul Biya?
Well, one thing I know for a fact is that Cameroonians have united to support the Indomitable Lions, and they have stood up as one person to fight against their enemies, you know. But I'm not sure that this is going to help the regime of President Paul Biya in any way. After the Africa Cup of Nations, when all is said and done, there's still going to be separatists fighting in the English-speaking regions. There's still going to be thousands of young graduates who are unemployed in the country. There's still going to be thousands, if not millions, of people who are disgruntled following 40 years of what some have called unfulfilled promises, you know. So I don't see this helping Paul Biya in any way. But one thing I know also is that there's been some tensions have somewhat been calmed during the tournament. There have been less attacks in the southwest and northwest regions of the country where separatists are fighting defense forces since 2017. And that could partially be because the government deployed additional troops to those regions to ensure that everybody who comes for the Africa Cup of Nations can be saved. But then, besides that, I'm not sure that even if Cameroon wins the tournament, people would be happy for a day or two or a week, but then they're going to just go back to the daily complaints about from corruption to unemployment to every difficulty that they're facing, all thanks to President Biya's very long stay in power.
Yeah, and again, you always wonder. You heard Ruben there mentioning some of the great African teams of the past. I can recall back in 2002, Senegal's president atop a car holding a football after they defeated France at the World Cup. Abdoulaye Wade got a lot of mileage out of that. You always wonder when you have these kinds of tournaments. Juliette Baou, I'll put the question to you, because on Friday, we've got a meeting of ECOWAS, the regional bloc in West Africa. They'll be talking about things that are very far from the football pitch, coups in Burkina Faso and Mali. Mali, which has now been eliminated from this tournament. Burkina Faso, which is through to the quarterfinals. And is it easy to separate the sports from the politics, or is there that calculus of the context that surrounds the football?
Right. I think just like Claudia was saying, for most Cameroonians, their excitement will live on for years as the benefits of being the host nation for an AFCON are enormous. And this does a lot to the psyche of a country, and also Cameroonians' appreciation and the perspective on football will definitely be made richer after this. But there are also legacies to be left for generations, and there are huge infrastructure also benefits for them as well. We are seeing the tournaments being hosted in some of the best facilities that you can have here in the country. And one that is attracting, we've mentioned about the stampede that happened, which wasn't good. And the world's gaze now is on Cameroon, and that is also an opportunity that they want to make a statement with. And Burkina Faso, like rightly you mentioned, there's an absolute reason to believe that the team, or that should the team do well and possibly maybe win the trophy, there will be so much political capital and also meal made out of that, because football brings everyone together. And as to who takes the credit for that particular one, we wait to see. But for His Excellency Paul Biya, this tournament, I'm sure definitely is one he will cherish, and even more should the Indomitable Lions win. As for what it does to the so-called pressure on him politically, football has a way of bringing joy to the people.
Okay, so Juliette, we're out of time, so I'm going to go around the room and just in one word, I'm going to start with you. Who's going to win the tournament?
It's going to be tough. But maybe Senegal or Cameroon.
Senegal
maybe.
or Cameroon.
I would be totally wrong.
Ruben Slachter?
We'll also go for Senegal.
You'll also go for Senegal. Simon Harding?
Morocco.
Morocco, okay. And we'll conclude with our Yaoundé correspondent, Claudio Nsono.
Cameroon is hosting this competition 50 years after it first hosted it, and the trophy is definitely going to stay home.
All right, definitely. I'll write that down. Claudia, many thanks for joining us from Yaoundé. I want to thank as well Simon Harding, Juliette Baou in Douala. Also want to thank you, Ruben Slachter. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.